All right. I'm looking at the time over here, folks. It says 4:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to first start off by saying hello to everyone and welcoming you to this evening's housing webinar. I want to also thank everyone for taking the time. I know everybody's got a busy day, doing a lot of different things, and so we appreciate you taking the time and being with us here today. So look, we understand that there's been a lot of discussions going on in the community about housing in general, and also specifically discussions taking place about the construction that you see happening at the former Regency Theater site. And so that really takes us to the purpose and the goal of today's webinar, which is simply that we're here for you, right? I want to make sure that we make that clear and to let you know that we're here to answer questions and address any concerns that you have. And we look forward to this opportunity today to provide clarification and give you some accurate information on this topic. So I want to take this moment to thank those of you that submitted questions in advance of today's webinar. You'll see that throughout our presentation today, we've included those questions along with answers. And so you will see those as we move along. And don't worry, if you didn't have time to submit your questions in advance, there is no need to worry. Because you'll be able to ask those questions today during the presentation through the use of the Q&A button. So that should be located at the top of your screen, not to be confused with the chat button, but go ahead and use that Q&A button. If you didn't have any questions to submit and you feel like you have a question now, go ahead and use that. And at any point during the presentation, just click on that and enter your question, and we'll make sure that we get that answered today. And also, for the sake of time, I just wanted to let everyone know that we're going to try and keep things organized during the Q&A by only taking questions from the Q&A button. So there won't be, unmuting anybody. It'll just be, if you have a question, go ahead and put it into the Q&A, and we'll take care of answering everything that way. And lastly, I just want to mention that this webinar is being recorded. So the complete video, as well as all of the questions and the answers, will be posted online on our website following the presentation today. And if you could just give us maybe till the end of this week to kind of compile everything together, we should have that up on our website and available for everyone to take a look at. So, so the agenda for today is as follows. We're going to go ahead and we'll start by introducing our team of subject matter experts. We'll also then provide some background information on the state housing landscape. We'll answer the all-important question, right? What does affordable housing actually mean? We'll then provide some clarification and details on the construction going on at the former Regency Theater site. And then throughout the presentation, you'll see we'll be answering those questions that were submitted in advance of today's webinar. And then once we've concluded the formal presentation and answered those questions, we'll then go to the Q&A and questions, and we'll answer those at the end with a Q&A session. So with that, I would like to introduce you to our team that will be answering your questions. From our Community Development Department, we've got our Community Development Director, Denise Thomas. We have our Principal Planner, Robbie Nesevic, and our Senior Planner, Jean Burse. From our Public Works Department, we have our Public Works Director and City Engineer, Charmaine Yambao, along with our City Traffic Engineers from Kimley Horn and Associates, Matt Stewart and Shri Chakravarthi. And then from our City Managers Department, we have our City Manager, Nathan Hamburger, our Communications Manager, Mary Haddad, and hello once again, I'm your Assistant City Manager, Ramiro Adeba. All right, so let's move into the first part of our presentation, which is covering housing law questions. And for this part, Denise, our Community Development Director, this first set of questions will be for you. And the first question, let's go ahead. So the first question is, this person would like to know more about the density bonus, as well as laws requiring cities to add more housing, especially in fire risk areas. So if you could start there, Denise, that'd be great. Hey, Denise, are you there? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the time that you're taking out of your day to learn more about housing in the city of Agoura Hills. The housing laws that govern the affordable housing process and residential development in general were all spurred from Governor Brown's declaration that the state was in a housing crisis. And so there's a series of laws that the legislature has passed over the years, since 2017, actually, that are geared toward encouraging the production of housing. During the deliberations and the public hearings, the legislators actually said that the reason why we have very little housing is because of local government's control. That local government somehow was affecting the production of affordable housing, and so a lot of the laws that were adopted subsequent to that tend to curtail our local control. And so with that, I'm going to let Ramiro move on to, can you go back one slide? I'm sorry, Ramiro. So the question is asking about density bonus law. So additional units or density, reduced parking, additional height, these are all incentives that were granted by the legislature when they adopted the density bonus law. State law grants developers relief from city requirements like setbacks, the number of stories, and the amount of commercial residential mix as part of the review of their projects. This relief is known as waivers or concessions or incentives. If a developer is providing the requisite amount of affordability, and state law goes into great detail over what affordable means, but once they have achieved the minimum requisite density, then they are entitled to relief. And so what that means is we cannot apply any of our rules or standards that would either physically prevent them from constructing the property at the density that's set by the state, or we cannot stop the project from moving forward utilizing our standards if they impose a financial hardship or they are just financially infeasible. And what does that mean? Well, what this means is that our objective standards have to be modified or waived if the project is going to incur an infeasible amount of cost, or if the project has to be reduced in scope or size. Thank you, Ramiro.
All right, thank you, Denise. So the next question is, why has Agoura Hills approved far more housing than required under RHNA and used RHNA exemptions to the Agoura Hills Building Code for additional non-mandated housing projects?
Thank you. State law requires every jurisdiction to provide their fair share of housing. This is known as the Regional Housing Needs Assessment Cycle, or the RHNA cycle. So periodically, the state does a study to assess what the housing shortfall is in California, and then each jurisdiction, cities, counties, tribal lands, are allocated a number, and they are told that they must provide zoning or provide capacity to have those numbers constructed by private development. So in addition to the total number of units that we have to have provided, which is 318, we're also required to provide 127 of those units as very low income units, 72 of those units as low income units, and 55 of those units as moderate income units. So the city's certified housing element identifies 20 housing sites. And these sites have the capacity to be able to develop the units in the affordability criteria, that the state requires of us. Because these projects are constructed through private investment, we're required to demonstrate to the Housing and Community Development Department at the state during our certification process for our housing element that there are sufficient incentives that are present in our housing element to stimulate the development of these units. RHNA is the reason we had to rezone property to allow housing, specifically affordable housing, to be constructed. And to give you kind of an illustration of what that means, let's just say, for instance, well, we are required to provide 318 units. And to do that, we gave the state a list of 20 sites where these 318 units could be constructed. The state in turn assigned us a density. They said that based on gross acreage, which is the total size of your site, you are allowed to have developer or property owner 20 to 25 dwelling units an acre. That was given to us by the state. It wasn't chosen by anyone locally, but it is the number that we have to accommodate for. And so with that number, if you had a 5-acre site, you would be able to build anywhere between 100 and 125 dwelling units. That's not including your bonus density, because the state says, depending on the amount of affordable units you're providing, that you're entitled to a bonus in density of either 35% or 50%. And the state gets really detailed as to how you would allocate the 35 through 50%. So with a 5-acre site and density bonus, that property owner could develop 135 to 169 units. Within that 135 and 169, we would be able to count 20 to 25 units towards our low and very low income requirement. The remaining 80 to 100 units are the market rate units. And those units too are mandated, and they're mandated by the state. They're not excess units. They're mandated by the state because the state mandates how many dwelling units per acre we have to assign to each one of our housing opportunity sites. If you'd like more information on this, you can feel free to give me a call and we can talk about it. Thank you, Ramiro.
Thank you so much, Denise. Okay, so let's move on to our next question, which says, the question is, can any already existing unoccupied structures be converted to housing? And can any much needed entertainment, for example, a theater, be added back in anywhere in Agoura Hills?
Thank you for the question. Yes, unoccupied structures may be redeveloped for housing. There are state laws geared toward redevelopment of underutilized retail, business parks, and religious institution sites. So yes, a theater could, yes, a theater could be developed. There are properties in the city that still have the requisite zoning that would allow for them to develop their property with a theater if they chose. They would just need to get a conditional use permit approved by the Planning Commission. Thank you, Ramiro.
All right, thank you. All right, so the next question, the last one in this section is, how many low income units are required by the city? Are ADUs, or accessory dwelling units, are ADUs allowed on residential property?
We are required to provide 199 units at the lower income ranges. We're required to provide 172 very low income units and 27 low income units. Yes, the state law and the city zoning ordinance permits accessory dwelling units to be constructed on residentially zoned property. You would just need, in some instances, to get a zoning clearance. In other instances, you would need a building permit. And if you wanted to do a very large one that didn't fall into the building permit only category or the staff review, we have a process whereby we could take you in front of the Planning Commission and you would be able to get that project reviewed. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Ramiro.
All right, thank you, Denise. Okay, so that concludes that portion of our questions. Right now, we're going to move into affordable housing in Agoura Hills, and I'm going to be calling upon our principal planner, Robbie Nesevic, to address this. So, Robbie, let's go ahead and ask the all-important question of what does affordable housing actually mean? So, over to you, Robbie.
Hey, Ramiro, and hello, everybody. So as you mentioned, we've received a lot of interest from the community about how, first of all, they can qualify to occupy the units, and questions about what the term affordable actually means. So simply put, a household can qualify for an affordable unit if they demonstrate that they make below a certain amount of money each year based on their household size. So on the next slide, I'll show you exactly what that means. So the income limits are actually a lot higher than what most people think. As you can see on the first table, for a one-person household, someone could qualify for low income if they make less than $77,700 a year. To qualify for a very low income household, the same person would need to make less than $48,550 a year. The limits increase based on household size. So if you have a single mother of two, for instance, the family would qualify for low income if they make less than $99,900 per year. Just below the income limits, you'll see the rents that would be charged for the affordable units if they were occupied today. For a studio apartment, a one-person household would pay roughly $859 per month for a very low income unit. For a three-person household, a low-income family would pay about $1,326 in rent. And state law aims to set rent at about 30% of a person's income, which is the threshold that is suggested by financial experts. As of February of 2025, rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Agoura Hills costs a minimum of about $2,600 per month. So if you just take the delta between the market rate units and the affordable units, a very low income family would spend at least $1,700 less on rent per month on a unit in the city. Most of the interest that we have received for the affordable units are from young professionals who work near the city but can't afford the rent, single parents, and people in retirement who are living on a fixed income. The affordable units will allow young professionals and those on fixed income to retire or live comfortably without having to worry about exponentially rising housing costs. I'll toss it back to you.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Robbie. Okay, so, up to this point, we've gotten to talk about some of the background on housing laws. And obviously, we just talked a little bit about defining affordable housing. And so we're going to go ahead and now focus our attention on the construction happening at the former Regency Theater site. We did receive a host of questions on this topic regarding traffic impacts, emergency evacuation, and even people inquiring about the availability of the units. And so for this set of questions, I'm going to turn it back over to Robbie to handle. So Robbie, over back to you.
Thanks, Jamira. For the next few slides, I'm just going to try to answer those questions that we received as best as possible, and we'll give a bit of a background on the project as well. The application was filed in 2023 and was approved by staff in April of 2024. Staff reviewed the application against all applicable development standards and did find that it met all the zoning requirements, with the exception of certain waivers and incentives requested by the developer. And I'll go a little bit more into depth about the density bonus requests in a few slides. The developer chose to design the apartment building around the large oak tree in the center of the property, which is the focal point of the residential courtyard. The project is proposing 278 units, including 28 very low income and 10 low income units, with a little over 5,000 square feet of commercial space on the northeast corner, where the FedEx building is currently located. The project provides a publicly accessible greenway along Agoura Road, as seen in the rendering on the screen, which will provide a nice transition from the Ladyface Greenway project that is currently under construction. And the construction of this project is anticipated to last about 27 months. If you could go to the next slide. We have received a lot of inquiries about the requirements for affordable units and how the city is going to ensure that the units are actually rented at the affordable rates. For the Regency project, since the units are for rent, the developer is required to deed restrict the property for at least 55 years. The deed restriction would ensure that the affordable units are built concurrently with the market rate units, and that they're the same base design, appearance, materials, and finish quality of the market rate units. Additionally, the developer is required to provide the affordable units at the same unit mix ratio as what is offered for the market rate units. And so for this project, the developer would need to provide 4 studios, 21 bedrooms, 13 2-bedrooms, and 1 3-bedroom at affordable rents. And if occupied today, the rent charged to the lower income households would range from $859 to $1,326 inclusive of utilities. Based on the average cost of rent for one-bedroom apartments, as we saw on the tables a few slides ago, this could save lower income families at least $1,700 a month on rent and would provide opportunities for upward mobility to all the 38 families that are able to occupy those units. Next slide. So the next questions that we received are about why the project doesn't meet the city's requirements. So first, I want to say that the Regency project had to comply with a number of objective standards. As you can see on the screen, the developer met or exceeded the requirements for providing front setbacks, building coverage, public and private open space, and parking. You'll also notice some standards with asterisks that the developer did not comply with. So tying back into the state density bonus law that Denise covered earlier in the presentation, the developer requested waivers of certain city development standards, and the state law requires the city to approve those waivers administratively if the standard would physically preclude the project. So under state law, the city was required to approve the request to waive the 3-story and 40-foot height limit, as well as the 20% minimum commercial requirement. And so the project is now 4 stories and about 49 feet high. So all of this being said about state density bonus, we do want to kind of applaud our city council, who was forward thinking enough to adopt the objective standards at the same time as the housing element. And it was because of these objective standards that we have been able to ensure quality architectural design. And absent all of these standards, the city would still be required to approve the housing projects, but we would have nothing to evaluate them against to ensure a quality design. And I'm showing this particular project elevation because it's a good representation of the fact that our objective standards are actually working, even though the developer is able to waive certain requirements under state law. So just for example, if you aren't an architectural professional, you probably didn't notice that there's a parking structure in the middle of the elevation. And that is because the city's objective standards require the developer to articulate parking structures to match surrounding apartment buildings. All the blue notes on this elevation point to objective standards that the developer was required to comply with, such as painting downspouts and providing weather protection at building entries. Next slide. And then just the last thing I'll touch on is that we have received many questions about how to apply for the affordable units. So while applications likely won't be available until 2027, we have started an interested party list and we'll be sending out an email notification to all people who have expressed interest when applications become available. My email address is on the slide, and we can also probably put it in the chat if Mary can go ahead and help with that. So I'll toss it back to Ramiro to talk about some transportation.
Thanks a lot, Robbie. Appreciate that. Okay, so now we're going to turn our focus over to traffic. We did receive a number of questions regarding traffic impacts of the project. And so for this, I will turn the presentation over to our city traffic engineer, Matt Stewart, to take over the next slide. So Matt, over to you.
Thanks, Ramiro, and hi, everyone. My name is Matt Stewart. I'm the city traffic engineer. So wanted to provide a quick intro here. And over the next several slides, I'll discuss the transportation analysis conducted for the Regency project and give you some information about the findings. And just a quick intro just to explain the process. Developers do transportation studies for each project that gets developed in the city. And then as the city, we review for accuracy and to review the findings and determine appropriate mitigations if necessary. So as you'll see on this slide, the scope of the study includes several roadway segments and intersections near the project along Canaan, Agoura, Cornell, and Roadside. And so these are all the locations where the project would generate new trips on the roadway and through intersections, and where the city wanted to evaluate any potential impacts to the city's network. And the analysis focuses on the 2 times of day when traffic is heaviest, which is the AM peak hour and the PM peak hour. Next slide, please. So the first step of a transportation analysis is the trip generation, where an estimate of the new vehicle trips that a project will generate is forecast. So this table contains a lot of numbers. So to try to break it down for you a little bit, the top of the table contains a summary of the existing land use, which has now been demolished. But there was a movie theater and a retail commercial center. And comparing that with what's proposed, which is the housing project plus a small commercial center. And so overall, over the course of an average day, there would be 2,000 fewer trips by the new project compared to what was previously there. And then looking at the 2 peak hours, in the PM peak hour, there actually is a reduction in trips. But for the AM peak hour, just due to the nature of housing generating trips in the morning, there would be an increase in 85 trips. So over the next few slides, I'll show the findings of the analysis during that AM peak hour. Okay, so this slide, the technical information continues a little bit. So this presents an overview of the roadway level of service on those 7 roadway segments near the project. So just to tee this up, there's 2 terms you may not be familiar with. The level of service, which is LOS, and then the V over C, which stands for the volume to capacity ratio. And this is how traffic conditions are assessed objectively. So what you'll see, like the first couple numbers on the table are the actual volumes on each roadway segment. And so we analyzed how many new trips would be on each roadway segment. And based on the number of lanes on each street, we can determine the capacity. And so by comparing the existing volume with the future volume with the project, we can assess the change in the volume to capacity ratio. So as you might expect, the project would generate more trips. And so what the analysis found is that that's true. And there is a little bit more of an impact on the city's roadway segments, but it's a very small change and would not result in a significant impact. And the project meets the general plan policies. And so this next slide is similar to the last, but this one focuses on intersection operations rather than roadway segments. And so it's for the 7 intersections near the project. And again, we compare the existing conditions to the conditions where you add the project volumes to the nearby intersections. And as you'll see, the project added delay ranges from 0 seconds in cases where not too many trips would be added there to no more than 0.3 seconds. So just due to the fact that there's not a ton of new trips being added during the AM peak hour, the project would not increase the amount of delay at any of the nearby signals to a significant degree. And then, so this last slide takes a step back from the Regency. This is a topic that's highly relevant and I'm sure on a lot of people's minds. So we just want to mention that the city recognizes that any type of evacuation is a dynamic scenario that is highly dependent on where a natural disaster occurs. But the city does 2 things. First, we review on a project by project basis to assess how would evacuation occur from a given project. So for the Regency, these 5 bullet points were reviewed during the plan submittal process. So ensuring that residents can safely get in and out of the site, determining the evacuation routes for project residents, analyzing the emergency vehicle access onto the site, verifying sufficient addresses and signs, and then ensuring that landscape fuel modification requirements are met. So all of that was reviewed on the project level, but then taking a step back for the citywide review, the city did conduct an analysis of the entire network of streets and intersections as part of updating the 2021 to 2029 housing element. And this analysis included evaluating the capacity of all the city roadways, identifying evacuation routes from each of the zones for how residents would evacuate onto the freeway. And specifically for this project, the capacity of both Agoura Road and Canaan were assessed. the volumes of people living in those, like along Agoura, in homes and in the hotels, as well as people living south of Agoura in the Santa Monica Mountains, was all taken into account, and a capacity analysis was conducted to ensure that there would be safe evacuation opportunities from houses onto US 101. So with that, I'll pass it back to Ramiro.
All right, thank you so much, Matt. Appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to go into other questions received. Before we do that, I do want to, I saw some people come on a little bit later in the webinar, and I just wanted to ease your fears that even if you came late, this is being recorded. I mentioned at the beginning that we are going to have the full recording of this webinar along with a transcribed list of the questions and all the answers from today also put on our website. So if you missed today's webinar, we will have all the information available for the community to see afterwards as well. And with that also, the questions and answers, I think Mary went ahead and mentioned in the Q&A, you don't have to wait until any part of this webinar. If you have a question in mind and you want to ask it, feel free to go ahead and do so at any point during this presentation. So with that, we're going to go into other questions received. And the first one, I'm going to ask Denise to go ahead and answer this first question. The question is, are ADUs allowed on residential? Oh, I guess we're going into, I'm sorry. This question is the city reviewing any other affordable housing overlay projects? So I guess this one's over to Denise.
Thank you, Ramiro. Yes, we currently have 2 projects that are under review. Neither have been approved. The first project is at the southwest corner of Canaan Road and Agoura Road, and as proposed, they're looking to do 238 units, and there would be 18 that would qualify for very low income and 18 that would qualify for low income. There's another project that's south of the Wizen Center, and that project has 33 units, 4 that are very low income and 2 that are low income. Thank you, Ramiro.
All right, thank you, Denise. Okay, so the next question. This one is going to go to Charmaine, our Public Works Director. So Charmaine, can we address biking that takes place along Agoura Road and how Regency construction will impact it?
Hello, Ramiro. Thank you. The answer to this is yes. For the work in any public right-of-way, the city requires an encroachment permit. And as part of that encroachment permit process, the developer or their contractor will need to submit their traffic control plans for all phases of the work proposed in the city's right-of-way. The traffic control plans are required to address all modes of transportation, which includes vehicles, bicyclists, and pedestrians. From what I understand, the Regency project the construction is going to occur much later. So details on their specific traffic control plans are unavailable right now. However, for those that would like to be kept in the loop, the Regency's project has plans to create a project website, which the city will share once created on the city's webpage for the Regency development. The Regency update can be found on the city's website under the Planning Department page under the Affordable Housing tab. And we will add the link into the chat for your use. Thanks, Ramiro.
All right.
Back
Thank
to
you so much, Charmaine. All right, so the next question that was received, Charmaine, I think we're going to stay with you. So this question, are there any plans to address traffic congestion on Canaan and Agoura Road?
Thanks, Ramiro. That's a good question. The City of Agoura Hills continually monitors and fine-tunes the signals along Canaan Road. The signals at Roadside and Canwood are owned by Caltrans, but the city coordinates with them regularly. During peak hours, the signals are timed to optimize throughput along Canaan Road. Additionally, the city is in the very early stages of a long-term capital improvement project for the Canaan Corridor. The purpose of this project is to address safety, operation efficiency, congestion, and multiple modes of transportation, both regionally and locally on Canaan Road. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
See you, Ramiro.
All right. Let's go to the next question. Okay, Denise, let's go to you for this one. Will there be a transit center to connect to the Conejo Valley Transit System? And the second part of the question is, will there be a bike storage facility?
Thank you, Ramiro. No, there will not be a transit center at this stage. It's not proposed as part of this development. There is an existing park and ride in the vicinity, but no new facilities have been planned for this site. With respect to bicycle storage, we require bicycle storage on all projects, on all non-residential projects and multifamily projects. And so there will be bike storage facilities associated with the Regency project. Thank you, Ramiro.
Thank you. All right, next question. Okay, I'm going to stay with you on this one, Denise. Has a comprehensive impact study been done on services like schools, hospitals, and fire departments?
Thank you, Ramiro. Yes. As part of the general plan update that we did in 2022, we did a subsequent environmental impact report that analyzed the impacts of the whole entire housing element, all 20 sites, including this one, on facilities like schools, hospitals, emergency services, police, and fire. And the subsequent EIR, the final EIR, indicated that there was adequate capacity in all of these institutions to be able to accommodate our entire housing element proposed sites, all 20 of them.
Awesome. Thank you, Denise. Okay, our next question. All right, I think I'm going to call on Robbie for helping with this one. So Robbie, has the city considered bringing in a company like City Bike or Metro Bike?
So the answer is yes. We've been reached out to from a few different companies that are similar, and we'll have further discussions with them once we get closer to the occupancy. But we still need to determine whether or not it's appropriate and whether there are measures that we can take to kind of reduce the risks and nuisances associated with those services, such as bikes being left in the right of way.
Thank you, Robbie. All right, so the next question, I'm going to go back to Denise on this one. So Denise, are there any energy saving credits offered to homeowners making improvements on their home?
At this time, no, the city does not offer any incentive or credit programs. However, SCE may. And so I would direct the asker of this question and anyone interested straight to SCE and ask them whether or not there are credits available.
All right, thank you. Next question. Denise, I'm going to stick with you on this one. So this person is saying that it would be interesting to know if the Regency Theater was already experiencing financial problems and may have closed regardless of the housing project replacing it.
Thank you, Ramiro. This question will be best answered by the owner of the Regency or by the previous owner. However, what I can say is that the new owner purchased the property with the intention of redeveloping it with housing, which suggests that the highest and best use of the property is housing, not a retail shopping center with a theater. Thank you, Ramiro.
All right, thank you, Denise. Our next question. Okay, so all right, Denise, I'm going to stick with you again on this one. So Denise, okay, what is the reality of the spaces above the shopping centers on Canaan to be approved? And can we approach the state regarding housing mandates to increase homes in a very tight and potentially unsafe area for escape routes? Can we look at alternatives to satisfy the mandates and quotas that would keep the limited escape routes open for residents and still provide housing? And why was I assured when this first came up that this is just a formality and would not be happening?
Thank you, Ramiro. The shopping centers located at Canaan and Agoura are located on Canaan Road. The 3 shopping centers have been zoned for residential uses for years, even before the general plan update occurred in 2022. The properties are privately owned. So if the owners wish to develop their property with housing, we would review the application and apply our ordinances the same as we would any other housing project. Prior to adoption of the city's housing element, a study was performed and presented to the city council during a public hearing that analyzed an evacuation scenario similar to the Woolsey fire. And the analysis showed that adequate capacity existed to evacuate the population in the event of an emergency. That's all I have to add. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Denise. All right, what do we got next? Okay, so this will take us to our continued Q&A. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, folks, we did receive questions in advance of the webinar, and those were addressed just now. And so that part has concluded. And so at this point, we're going to go ahead and ask our panel to address any of the questions that have been submitted in the Q&A since we've started this webinar. And Mary, I don't think I see any, but I'm going to double check with you. Do you see any Q&As that our panel needs to address?
Hi, Ramiro. Hi, everybody. So not at this point, there are no questions in the Q&A, but we can give everybody a couple of minutes here now that you've heard the presentation if you'd like to submit any questions, and we can go from there. I do see a hand up from the attendees. Unfortunately, you're not able to unmute yourself in the webinar, but if you could ask that question in the Q&A, if you have one, that would be great.
Yeah, Ray, I think we see you there. So if you can just go ahead and just type that into the Q&A by pressing the button at the top, we'll go ahead and wait for your question. While Ray's doing that, there was somebody that put a question, I think, in the chat, right, Mary, and so Denise, if you want to go ahead and look at that, you'll see that Denise went ahead and answered one of the questions regarding, there was somebody that asked about the numbers. And so Denise went ahead and provided those in the chat. We've also provided Robbie's contact information. There was another, I think in the chat box, there's somebody that asked about, are we only talking about the Regency today? We talked about that because there were specific questions that were submitted on that, but by all means, if there is a question additionally that you have, and you wrote that in the chat, please let us know. That's why we're here. We would love to be able to try and get you answers to any questions you have. So if you wrote that in the chat and you want to submit a question, you can go ahead and do so now, and we can try to answer that. And then Charmaine, our Public Works Director, entered in an update or a link that people can go to for future web page as it relates to the Regency project. So that's all in the chat. Mary, do you see anything? I don't see anything in the Q&A just yet. Oh, here we go. All right. I think we do.
All right, we just got one. I commend you for this presentation. This is exactly the info we were looking for. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. And that was in the Q&A. Oh, there's one in the chat. So I think we're intertwining between the chat and the Q&A, but that's all okay. So the question is, can you provide more details on how such a traffic study was done that determined with hundreds more residents, Canaan Road would still provide adequate evacuation because it already proved to fail during Woolsey? Bumper to bumper cars headed to the freeway. Even Little Liberty Canyon was bumper to bumper and impacted by more cars coming on Agoura Road.
All right, so thank you for that question. We appreciate that. I'm gonna turn it over to our city traffic engineer, Matt Stewart, and if you can go ahead and answer that question, that'd be great.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So I will note that the traffic study was done recently based on new state standards that jurisdictions have to assess the capacity of roadways. There's really 5 things that has to include, but identification of evacuation routes and developing strategies to assist with evacuations. So I hear your point that there was a lot of congestion during the Woolsey fire. This analysis is really focused on assessing the capacity of different roadways with the total demand of houses that would need to evacuate. I will say that each evacuation is different and has different timeframes with which people are evacuating, either in a voluntary phase as a disaster is approaching, and then in a mandatory phase as it's getting nearer and nearer. So I think I'll leave it at that. The study is yeah, I think I'll leave it right there.
Okay. All right, thank you. There is another question, I believe, right? What site were you referring to with 33 upcoming units, 6 affordable? Denise, can you answer that question?
Yes, so I'm referring to, there's a site directly south across Agoura Road from the Wizen Center, adjacent to the site that's known as the Cornerstone site. It is 2 lots east on Agoura Road from the Cornell-Agoura Road intersection. Jean Burse, do you know which site letter this is in our housing opportunity site?
I don't know the exact letter off the top of my head. However, the description of the site being just directly south of the Wisdom Center and east of the Cornell-Agoura Road intersection, there's an existing single-family residential structure that's immediately to the west of the affordable housing site that Denise mentioned that has the 33 units.
We will look up the site number and put it
It's site
in.
C. I just looked it up. Site
Thank you,
C.
Robbie. So if you, whoever is asking the question, so if you envision the driveway of, if you envision the hard corner of Cornell and Agoura Road, at that hard corner, there was a development called Cornerstone. And so it would be a lot or two east of that. And if you take a look at the map on our website, on our housing page, and you look for site C like Charlie, you'll be able to see exactly where it is. Thank you, Ramiro.
Thank you. Mary, or let's see.
Hi, Ramiro. We have one more in the Q&A, a couple in the chat. So I'll start with the Q&A. Next one's from Corey asking, respectfully asking whether the members of this panel live within Agoura Hills.
I can answer that. We do not. We do obviously spend a considerable amount of time working for you, the residents. And so, but as far as just answering the question, we do not.
And then one more here in the chat box. The project at Agoura Road and Cal Monticello will look down into several backyards. What will the city and state do for privacy and prevent loss of home value?
I'll just chime in here. I believe this question is asking about the Toll Brothers project on next to Dorothy and Agoura. So I would just recommend that project actually is a discretionary project that's coming in not under our affordable housing overlay. So if you have any public comments on that particular project in regards to privacy, you can submit public comments as part of both the environmental document and as part of the public review during the public hearing at the Planning Commission.
Right. You have anything else, Mary?
Nothing at this point, but we do have some time left in the webinar. If anybody wants to submit any more questions, we're happy to answer them.
All right. Well, you know, what I'll say is this. I mean, I think that you know, first, let me just summarize by saying that first, thank you to everybody that is attending. You know, obviously, we know that this is, you know, we're discussing a lot of very important topics for the community, and we just want to reiterate that we as a staff are here for you. So if there's information that we haven't covered today, or if there's anything that you would like to speak about, please do not hesitate to come in, say hi here, you know, in person, email us. I think we might have a slide on the next slide. So, obviously not seeing any more Q&A or anything coming through the chat. I do want to thank everybody for attending today. But if there's any additional questions or anything on your mind after today, maybe something comes up later, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and you can do so. The email is right there on the screen. It's planning@agourahillscity.org. We will also, as I mentioned before, this is being recorded, and so we will make sure that we put this up on the website, and so we'll be up on the website, as well as a list of all the questions and the answers that were provided here today. But we very much encourage you to reach out if you have any questions or any concerns. We definitely want to make sure that you're getting accurate information, and we know there's a lot of discussions floating around out there, and so the best thing, then, the best recommendations that we can make to anybody that has any questions is to just reach out to us. We're here for you, and we want to make sure that we get you any answers that you have to any of the questions and concerns that you have. So with that, I don't see any more Q&As or chats. So I'm going to say thank you again to everybody for being here today, and we look forward to engaging with you more in the future if you need us. So thank you again, and we're going to go ahead and sign off. So thank you, everybody.